Royalty. Royalty.
Shalom, Lit parents. The lesson for this week is titled David Fights Goliath. Our lesson objectives are: children will learn about courage. Children will be able to tell the Hebrew definition of the word courage. Children will learn and identify 3 new Hebrew letters. Children will learn the weapon David used to fight Goliath. And children will learn the physics in the words of Scripture. In addition to lesson objectives, we're going to add an element that is tailor-made to the child. They're called I can or I know statements. This allows the child to be an active participant in their learning, and it helps them focus in on what they should be learning. So as we have the lesson objectives, we're going to give the child a sheet where they're going to write down I can or I know statements at the end of the lesson so that you know that they have actually taken in the information. For instance, for lesson objective number 1, children will learn about courage. The response from the child should be, I know what courage means. For lesson objective number 2, it will be, I can tell you the definition of the word courage. As the child gets more fluent in doing this process of I can or I know statements, it's a very, very good way for us to check back with them to see if they're actually grasping the information that we've set forth for them. So this week, make sure you download your resources, get your I can statements, and let's go. Yisrael, Yahuwah, Eloheinu, Yahuwah, Ehad, Va'ahavta, Et, Yahuwah, Eloheha, Behol, Levavacha, Uvhol, Nafshecha, Uvhol, Meodecha. Psalm 23, a psalm of David. Yahuwah is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of Yahuwah forever. Shalom Yeladim. Let's look over some of the things we learned last week. Last week, we covered the Hebrew word batach, which is translated in English as trust. And we learned how David's trust allowed him to stand before a great giant and to be confident in the promises of Yahuwah. We also learned that maybe sometimes people don't understand our confidence, and that's okay, because we can point them to where our confidence comes from in Torah. We also learned about the mean Philistine army that came and put fear into the Israelites. David explained to the army how they served a living Elohim and how his confidence allowed him to defeat that great giant. This week, we're going to look at how exactly David defeated that giant. We'll look at his sling and his courage. So let's get ready to find out just a little bit more. The images, storyline, and activities are brought to you by Bible Pathway Adventures.
Yeah.
This week we're going to start our story looking at how David defeated Goliath. If you remember from the previous story, we learned that Goliath was a giant. He was upwards of 9 feet tall. That was head and shoulders above everyone in Israel, even King Saul, who was pretty tall. David went out to meet his brothers and saw how Goliath was taunting the Israelites. David had already decided that something needed to be done. David's brothers didn't take well to him coming out there and being so confident about defeating the giant. As everyone else was scared, he was talking like a madman. He was telling them that Goliath didn't stand a chance. The people told King Saul about what David said, and then King Saul wanted to speak to David. Let's read the account directly from the scriptures to see exactly the conversation between David and King Saul. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 32. And David said to Saul, "Let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will fight with this Philistine." And Saul said to David, "Thou art not able to go against the Philistine to fight him, for you are but a youth, and he is a man of war from his youth." And David said unto Saul, "Your servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him and slew him. Your servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this Philistine shall be as one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living Elohim." We're going to look at a couple of clips from the History Channel that show the physics behind how David defeated Goliath. Let's pick back up with the story. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 48. And it came to pass, when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hastened and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand in his bag, and took thence a stone, and slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. In our short clip, we saw that it took a lot of detail in order to get the right shot. This wasn't David's first time using a sling, and so he knew that every step counted. One of the things that jumps out in this passage is how David ran toward Goliath as Goliath came toward him. David took advantage of every bit of Goliath's height, size, and strength and used it against him. He used the wisdom given to him by Yah and the courage that he had obtained through walking with Yah even when he was caring for his father's sheep.
He raised his spear and stomped towards David. Clouds of dust rose with each step the giant made, but David wasn't afraid. He grabbed a stone from his bag, put it in his sling, and swung it above his head. David aimed at the giant and let it fly. The stone whizzed through the air like a rocket and smacked Goliath in the middle of his huge, hairy forehead. Goliath stumbled forward and crashed to the ground. David had killed the mighty Philistine with just a sling and a stone. The soldiers stood and stared in astonishment. They couldn't believe the young shepherd had just killed their great giant. David stood over his enemy. "Now, do you believe me?" he said, looking down at Goliath's limp body. He pulled out the Philistine's sword and chopped off his head. God has given Goliath into our hands. The Israelite army cheered. When the Philistines saw their hero was dead, they turned and ran away as fast as they could, but the Israelites didn't let them escape so easily. They grabbed their weapons and chased the Philistine soldiers all the way back to their homes. David hadn't forgotten about Goliath's head. He tucked it under his arm and carried it back to Jerusalem. Saul was very pleased with David. "From now on, you work for me," he said, placing a hand on David's shoulder. "You're a soldier, not a shepherd." Israel sang and danced and played their tambourines. This victory proved Yah was with them. They had defeated the mighty Philistines.
And we're going to learn a new Hebrew word. For those of you that may not know Hebrew, we're going to use a very, very simple method in order to get us all on the same page. This simple method is the method of using the pictograph form or the ancient picture form so that we can all understand what these words mean. As we progress through our lessons, we'll incorporate or we'll add in the other forms of Hebrew, but for now, since we're starting out, we're going to use the pictures that we can see and experience with our eyes. These pictures are things that are part of your everyday life, so don't be alarmed if it's something that looks a little strange because we're going to explain it. Today's Hebrew word is the word emetz. It's spelled Aleph, Mem, Zadi. The pictures are of an ox head, moving water or motion, and a man on his side or desire and need. The first picture is the picture of an ox head. An ox head in the Hebrew culture represented power, strength, might, and leadership. It also stood for first or something that was right in front. Take some time and practice writing an aleph. The next Hebrew letter in the word ametz is the letter mem, which is water, motion, or chaos. You see, the up and down motion can represent something that has movement. Take some time and practice drawing the pictograph for the letter mem. This pictograph is Zadi. It represents a man on his side, desire, need, or hunter. Practice writing the letter Zadi. These three letters give us the Hebrew word ametz, which is translated as courage. Courage is when we are strong and firm in something. Last week we learned that David was strong and firm in trusting Yah. Trusting Yah is what gave David his courage. In 1 Samuel chapter 17 verse 48, David tells King Saul about his courage and bravery in guarding and keeping his father's sheep. He tells him about the lion and the bear that tried to take sheep from his father's flock, and how he pursued after them, or went after them and fought them to get back his father's sheep. This is courage. We learn from this courage, or this opportunity to practice being brave, that Yah was preparing David to fight against the Philistine giant Goliath. When David was set before Goliath, he had already been brave and courageous and trusted Yah to fight him even when it was just sheep. So when David stood before Goliath, he had no fear, and he told King Saul that just as he had defeated the bear and the lion, he would defeat that Philistine giant Goliath in the mighty name of Yahuwah. His bravery and courage had already been put to the test, and Goliath was just a small enemy in a lineup of great victories that King David would have by trusting Yah. This week's memory verse is from Joshua chapter 1 verse 9. It says, "Have I not commanded thee? Be strong and of a good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed. For Yahuwah thy Elohim is with thee, whithersoever thou goest." Wow, that was fun. I hope you guys had a great time today and that you learned something about trusting in Yah and how we can depend and know that He's going to follow through for us. Go to BiblePathways.com and check out some of the cool activities they have for this lesson. Until next week, may the Most High keep you, bless you, and may His face shine upon you. And always remember that living in Torah is lit.
This little light of mine.